All right, well, then I will call this virtual real-time meeting to order, operating under the resolution adopting procedures for public meetings under Nelson County's ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster and the governor's amendment to the budget bill adopted by the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Board on May 18th, 2020. Thank you all very much for coming. We have a short agenda, but a lot of work went into it. So thank you very much to the staff for everything that you've done. David, do you want to walk us through what you've got prepared for today?
Sure. Yeah, and I just realized that I am missing, we are missing Jerry here.
Oh, of course.
I can speak to this, but Krista, can you reach out and try and get a hold of him and send him the link?
Yep, I will.
Thank you. Thomas, I'm going to screen share. Is that okay?
Please, yeah.
Okay, so the goal today is to discuss potential expenditure from fiscal year 21's general fund. Jerry and I, Jerry did all the hard work and came up with a lot of different scenarios to look at what our potential surplus will be at the end of this year. As we discussed in the full board meeting last month, there was some extra funding that came in from the state for state aid, which was not expected. But then also there was a forfeiture in retirement funding that came back as a credit. The big mover here, though, is salary savings. We generally have some open positions and some salary savings, but this year more than most. We had some folks leave and positions that were in the higher retirement costs. And then we also had some positions that were open for a while and leave without pay for medical reasons. So there are significant savings this year that are going to lead to a projected surplus. Get you on the right page. Jerry says he's having connection issues. So the bottom line of what we're looking at potentially, if nothing were to happen and JMRL were to spend out its operational budget as is. Oh, geez. I'm just trying to move down one line. Here we go. Is the $174,465, which is a very significant chunk of change in a surplus this year. So JMRL staff have been looking at some scenarios for using that and the best way to use it this current fiscal year. What we have done in the past with a projected surplus is bought excess equipment or large one-time purchases, such as if we were to need a new vehicle of sorts. We do have on the lot here a new delivery truck, so we're good on that front, and a new van. Both of those have been surplus purchases before. The other more common thing is to move some funding into the book budget, which always needs support, the materials budget, to buy materials towards the end of the year. This year, as most of you are aware, JMRL staff did not get a pay raise. And the last time that happened was after the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, 2010. And at that time, that library board decided with a surplus to give a one-time bonus to staff. So Jerry and I worked on some scenarios for what those bonuses would look like. And it's going to be my recommendation to you all to discuss today that we make one-time staff bonuses this year, this fiscal year, and that we craft a recommendation for the full board on what that should look like to be discussed at the board's February meeting. Can I move that? Okay, so this spreadsheet here just basically shows what revenues have come in for the year to date, what revenues we're expecting for the rest of the year, what expenses we've had year to date, what expenses we're expecting for the end of the year, what the difference is between those, what our current general fund balance is, and what the expected general fund balance would be at the end of the year, minus the allowable carryover, which gives us that number, 174,465. Are there any questions about where that number is before we move on to what bonus scenarios would look like? Okay. It's hard not being able to see people's faces now then. Okay. So this is where we worked out basically 7 different pay scenarios, which are on the left-hand column here, and then the total costs, which are on the right-hand column. The goal was to get a net pay amount for staff so that they would get a one-time check that was a round number. And the cost for JMRL is going to be greater than that because you actually pay the employee greater in order to take care of the withholdings that would happen on the federal level, the state level. So for Social Security, things like that. The top level that we looked at, which is in line with what some of our jurisdictions are doing right now. Albemarle County in April is looking to give a $1,000 bonus to their full-time staff. Nelson County has given a $1,000 bonus to their full-time staff. Some of our jurisdictions use CARES funding in the last calendar year to give bonuses to frontline staff. Of course, JMRL did not have any access to that. Now some of them are looking back into their operating funds and general funds for additional bonuses, especially in places where there was no cost of living increase last year, such as Albemarle County. They didn't get a raise this current year, so they are getting this bonus. It's my recommendation that JMRL follow suit there. So at the top level costs, we've got $1,000 bonus for full-time staff, which for the sake of this, we looked at 30 hours and up. And then under 30 hours, $500 bonus for any of those staff. And in the very top level, we included our substitute employees, which is the very bottom of our pay scale. You can see a breakdown here in rows 13, 14, and 15 of how many individuals that is. It's 80 full-time employees, 28 in the part-time category, and 15 in the substitute category. So the net pay there is $102,000. That would be the take-home pay for the individuals. And the gross cost to JMRL would be $157,895. So it's within that surplus amount and would leave a small amount left over there. The other scenarios where the second line is just pulling the substitute bonus down to $250 per individual. That's $151,000 total. And then down the line. So $1,000, $500 for part-time, $100 for substitutes, total of $147,000 for JMRL. Row 7 here is no bonus for substitutes, and that would cost a total of $145,000. The last three scenarios are looking at a smaller level, totaling $78,000 down to $72,000. Would be $500 for full-time staff, $250 for part-time staff, and then a couple different scenarios for substitutes. So that is the work that has happened there. My recommendation is that the board look at giving a $1,000 full-time employee bonus in April, a $500 part-time employee bonus, and $500 for our substitute employees. That would leave some funding left in that surplus. And my recommendation there would be to shift that to the materials budget, so that materials can be bought between now and the end of this year. Likely, many of those would be electronic materials to keep up with the demand for those that aren't getting into the physical buildings. Also, they are a quicker processing time. We can get them in quicker. We can use this funding. We're looking at, state aid news is incomplete at this point. We were looking at a cut next year. It looks now like there might be additional funds, which would put us about where we are this year, but still more needs there.
I see Lisa's got her hand up.
Great.
Hi, thank you so much for this, for all the work on the committee that did all of this. Thank you so much. I had a question about the differences between part-time and substitute. I approve of the numbers that you have. I guess my question was about what are the substitutes doing? Have they been really engaged during the time of COVID, so that they would merit as much as a part-time employee? I don't know what I understand what part-time workers do. I don't understand what substitute workers do and how much they are engaged throughout the jurisdiction.
Yeah, great question, Lisa. And it depends branch to branch in terms of usage. We do have some branches and locations where substitutes are scheduled and used on a regular basis. And then we've got some where it really is you call when somebody is sick. But for the most part, every substitute has worked during our COVID response since last March. And in many situations, they have been crucial to being able to offer services in Tier 4 and Tier 3. They've been coming into the building and they've been interacting with the public directly. So while this is not, what we're not talking about here is like a hazard bonus. This would be for all staff. Those folks have been very, very much engaged in the work. The differences in substitutes and part-time in general, Lisa, is that the substitute employees are called in on short term, and they are not eligible for JMRL benefits. They do not go through the JMRL training or evaluation processes. So they're meant to be used as a substitute teacher kind of when somebody can't come in. But the reality is that with staffing shortages in the last year or so, a lot of them have been called in to do work.
No, thank you so much. That makes sense. I have no objections to the pay schedule for the top row, 1,000, 5, and 5. If that's something that the team of employees are also satisfied with. Were there part-time and substitute people involved in the decision making on this?
This work was done entirely by Jerry and myself. So
Okay.
it's not, staff have not been consulted on this at this point.
Okay.
A couple other hands went up there. I think Marcy, I saw yours go up first.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. First of all, part-time employees, anybody under 40 hours a week, is that right?
For the basis of this, what you're looking at here, it's under 30 hours a week.
Under 30 hours a week. So anybody who would be like 35 hours a week, I don't know whether you have anybody at that level. They would be considered a full-time employee?
Yes, for the basis of this, we only had a handful of folks that worked over 30, like between 30 and 40. I think it was 3 or 4, and they were lumped in with the full-time employees.
Okay.
It's just a lack of demarcation. So this group can talk about other scenarios for sure.
Okay. Second question, do you have an estimate for the average pay for your substitute employees?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get that. Our substitutes are at the bottom of the pay scale. They start at the lowest end of the pay scale, and they are not eligible for annual raises. So the only time they get a raise is when the pay scale comes up. So Marcy, likely the answer is going to be the average is going to be the bottom of the band 1, stage 2, which is currently support. So branch support or circ support, which is, I think that pay is like, don't quote me on this. I think it's $11.54 an hour.
Okay. Great.
And we do have some substitutes that are at a higher level. We have a few reference librarian substitutes that work at various different branches that would bring that average up, but the bulk of these employees are in the support level.
Great. That's what I had expected.
Okay.
Lindsay?
I think David just said what I was going to say. I just wanted to clarify for the board members that subs do not get raises unless the pay scale goes up. So it is nice to give them a bonus. And I have 3 subs and they're all at 3 different pay levels because of the different levels of responsibility they have when they sub here.
And Lindsay, can you maybe speak to the question about how much work since last March these folks have put in?
Well, no one did any work in the spring or much of, part of the summer. The subs started coming back in the fall when we opened up more hours and had more things going on here. So the subs have been working routinely since, I'd say, August, September.
Thanks.
Now that we're open to the public, even more.
So are there other scenarios that this group would like to explore? There's flexibility there. You can see the top dollar amount is not the amount of the surplus. So there is room to talk about other options. These were just the ones that Jerry and I, as we were trying to forecast how much this would cost. And likely we would pick a cutoff date for when employees started as well, of at least having started probably prior to January 1st. Looks like Wendy, did you have a hand up? I saw one hand.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm having some internet struggles down here. Oh, Wendy, we've got you on mute.
Oh, I just had a question. David, what would the pay raise or the pay bonus, I understand, and besides book supplements, and were there any other pressing expenses that you can think of or something else that you had in mind besides those 2?
Well, the reason we waited so long in the fiscal year really was because we were holding off on the equipment budget, Wendy, and that would have been the place where we would have looked to spend. You know, if we had a need there, we would have tried to use some of the surplus money on that. But our equipment budget is in pretty good shape. Managers held off for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, and Jerry and I started reviewing them in January, and Jerry's been working on ordering, and it's healthy. It's in good shape. So there isn't an outstanding need there. So we can handle that with the equipment budget, basically. So the answer is no, basically. There's nothing else.
You already did the prioritization. Okay.
Yes, and in years past, we would look at this as an opportunity for the major equipment, as I mentioned, the truck and the van, but both of those are relatively new, so we were in good shape on that end. We got a new truck with a backup camera. It's very exciting.
That's awesome.
I think they're standard now. I think you can't. I think it's
I
illegal.
might be able to drive then.
Was there another hand up?
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Thank you, Marcy.
I just wanted to go back to your question about whether there's another scenario that we ought to envision. And it seems to me that one of the things we need to consider is that whatever we do be in line with what the jurisdictions that are giving bonuses do. And this first option seems to be, at least for Nelson County, very much in line with what the county had decided to do for their own employees. So I would say that probably makes it easier for us to justify in case anybody were to question it.
That's Marcy, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'm done.
That was the reason that the 30 hours was the cutoff, was because Albemarle County was using a full-time was like 71% of full-time and up. So that was the basis that I made that distinction here, but instead of just saying only 40-hour employees. And again, it only affected a handful of employees that we looked at. Thomas, do you want to look at everybody's face instead of the chart?
I don't mind. No, this is fine. I like having the numbers up. I think that this seems to make a lot of sense. I appreciate what Marcy just pointed out. You know, I kind of had that sense as well, that this seems very much in line with what we've seen from a lot of peer communities and other jurisdictions around the state. I know there was news out of the Richmond area that they were doing similar things. I think it was Hanover County. Yeah, and with no specific needs for equipment, no larger projects in the materials budget, I think the idea of sending, you know, 16,000 in remainder to the materials budget and funding that top line seems to make perfect sense to me. I'm not hearing a lot of disagreement on that, it doesn't sound like. So is this something that we're comfortable as a group taking forward to the full board?
I would sure be comfortable with it.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we present the option 1 to the full board when we meet on the 22nd.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Well, then that is the recommendation that we will carry forward at our meeting at the end of the month. And I hope that everyone else will be as excited about it as we are.
So Thomas, what I'll do at that point, we'll craft a motion for the board should they choose to vote this month, but also it's possible that the board will want to discuss this month and then vote in March. So we'll have a motion ready in case the board wants to go, but otherwise it can carry over. There can be some discussion this month, some time to think about it. If they have questions about different options, then we could look at those.
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, in the interest of getting everybody home safely, I don't see any need to dawdle around here. Do we have a motion to adjourn if that's all the business?
I move that we adjourn if there's no business remaining.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right. Get home safely, everybody. Thank you very much for all the work.
Everyone, thank you
Thanks,
and
Thomas.
stay
Thank
safe,
you, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.